Good day, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Nigerian in Focus show. My name is Bukola Adimola, and I'll be your host for today. Our topic for today is education in focus. The Nigerian education sector is a sector that literally everybody have an opinion about. And knowing the fact that we have new administration and we have new minister for education, we want to discuss the challenges that is currently going on in the education sector in Nigeria, and also possible solution from the angle of our guests that the government can use to improve this sector. Joining with me today are two important guests that are vast and knowledgeable in this sector. Starting from my right is...
My name is Hilda Shehu. I am an alumna with Teach for Nigeria, and I'm the founder of My Q Initiative. So My Q Initiative is basically a learning platform where we train and develop the competencies and skills of young children or students who are about to leave secondary school. And most of the skills that we center around are leadership skills, problem-solving skills, creative thinking skills, and critical thinking skills. In the last 7 months, we have trained at least 25 students and we have graduated them.
Thank you so much for joining us, Hilda. And to my left, we have...
My name is Nelson Igbunu. I'm a development practitioner and I currently serve as the head of programs for Africa Youth Growth Foundation. And Africa Youth Growth Foundation is interested in ensuring youth representation in 6 thematic areas, of which, of course, education will be one of it. Over the 5 years of my professional career, I've been able to work with both government and non-government organizations to review policies, to implement projects, and to ensure that every child have access to quality education. So in the heart of everything I do is that Nigerian child in a remote rural community that don't have access. So access to education stands big for me. And the issue of inclusivity with our education too is something that is also an area of my interest. So I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us. We have a balanced guest on this table today. I am super excited to be in this conversation because Nigeria education system is like, there's always something to say about it. There's always some challenges that we all have passed through this system, and we all know that to an extent, yes, it has some little stuff that we think can make the education sector better. I mean, it is not that bad, but at the same time, it can be better than this. So I'll start with you, Nelson. What is your general view of the Nigerian education sector? What's your general, how do you view our sector?
So personally, I would like to look at it from 2 perspectives. Okay. Firstly, I'll say the Nigerian education ecosystem is a very unique one. Especially we have over 250 ethnic groups in Nigeria, and all of those are collapsed into that system. So it gives room for diversity, the richness in diversity. And I just want to highlight that as one of the pros of what we have in our education system. However, the educational system of Nigerian is plagued with a lot of challenges. And one of them is access to education, which is something that resonates so dearly to me. As much as education is free, at least basic education, based on the Universal Basic Education Act, basic education is free. However, children from rural communities still don't have access to school. Either it is because of school proximity, so they have to deal with issues of transportation, either it is issue of even funding school, because they say school is free, but I keep asking one question, which is how free is free? Because if these people will have to still pay one form of levy or one form of fees that sum up to a reasonable amount of money, just so imagine that farmer in the rural communities with 10 children, possibly maybe he wanted them to have resources to go on his farm, you understand, 10 children, and he's going to pay a total amount of 9,000 plus to send them, to enroll them back to school. Because by the time you put those levies for enrollment, you get almost that amount of money. And times it by the 10 children he has. You see, it's something that will be a burden for him.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I mean, thank you so much for even going to my next question. But I mean, we can't even give our general view on Nigerian education sector without not talking about the challenges we are also seeing there. Okay, from your angle, Ida, what's the general view of the Nigerian education sector?
So basically, Nelson has said it all. So there's the issue of access, there's the issue of underfunding, infrastructure is in a very poor status. We also have issues of teachers not being adequately catered to, and you also see that they are not well trained. I think recently, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it's like we had Kaduna State do a teachers reshuffling program. That's not what it was called, but I would call it that. So we had teachers take exams and we saw them fail, right? So we see these teachers who are supposed to impact knowledge in future generations being the ones actually not skilled enough to, to impact this knowledge that they're supposed to. So he has actually basically summed everything up. So the Nigerian education system is a dynamic one with lots of problems and challenges that actually need to be addressed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution also in that. Because from my own angle, I see the Nigerian sector as a very, very delicate sector. And maybe because, I don't know why lots of administration do not kind of like devote their attention to that sector. Because this is like the early stage for me for most young people.
Of course.
If you miss it in the education sector, they will have to, it's not as if they cannot maybe cope, but they will have to like double it. Just as if some skills that you don't learn in school, you leave school, your job is requiring it, you have to learn it all over again. So it's like giving the child double work. And Nelson, let's go to our university. Let's just go to our university generally. The Nigerian university is a complex one for me. Why? Because I mean, we all pass through university. There are a lot of, should I say, shortage of resources first. We have that. Apart from that, the curriculum in university is strange for me. Let me use the word strange. I don't know, maybe from your hand, maybe you see it with another word. But the word for me is strange because it's like it's not like, it is old curriculum that the university are using. At the same time, it is not practical enough for students. It is mostly theoretical. Something just, the practice is not there. And then leaving school, it's like you're just stuck. Where are you going to move forward from here? So what do you have to say about that? And maybe possible solution you think can help curb that?
I will agree with you right on the back of you mentioning that education is the bedrock for every society, meaning that if we fail it even at the early stage, that is early childhood education, we lose their interest for education at all. So one thing that I want to even start as a recommendation is that we need to revisit our technical colleges, because the technical colleges lay the foundation for even those in the higher institutions now to adopt all these technical skills. You understand? Well, if the interest is not there, it's not there. So another thing that I just think we need to focus on in the higher institutional level, which I think, thank God, we now have a new minister, and he has been in the system. He was the vice chancellor of Base University, so you understand the politics and bureaucracy around the educational system, especially at higher education level. This incessant strike in the university is almost like strike is part of the curriculum in our Nigerian university, so, especially the public ones. So it looks like when you go, you must just expect at least 2 to 5 months of strike staying at home because of the ASU demand on improving on the quality and infrastructure in the universities. So it's just for the minister now to start taking into account these demands. You understand? If he really wants to just make a good name for himself, it's just begin to address those issues that the ASU have been going year in, year out to strike on. And now focusing on skills and curriculum, I was with the head of education for the Nigerian Governors Forum last weekend. And one thing he told me was that currently the curriculum for our higher institutions are being reviewed. So this is good thing. We can just clap and commend the current. So they are aware of the fact that our curriculum doesn't meet the reality of now. So things like technology, digital literacy, things like artificial intelligence now that is the trend in the globally, right? Yes. Needs to be infused into green skills, vocational skills, technical skills have to come into the curriculum. So the information he gave me was that currently the Nigeria Governors Forum Secretariat is engaging professors in all of these states through the Ministry of Education down to the state Ministry of Education to revamp the curriculum. So there's a silver lining in the end of this storm that we have, or there's a light at the end of the tunnel regarding curriculum. So I know with little time we'll see significant changes with the curriculum that is being delivered in our university. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. I don't know, I feel relaxed.
Yeah.
I feel relaxed. Thank you so much for that, because the curriculum really needs to be revamped.
Of course.
Like, it needs to be reviewed. What do you have to say, Ada?
Okay, so this information Nelson shared is actually I think it's good news. So when I was thinking about the curriculum, one of the things that just kept echoing in my head was, the bureaucratic system in, I think it's, let me not just say in the education system, I think it's everywhere. So there's this whole chain of commands and this whole due process. I feel that even if this is in the works, we might have cases of rigid bureaucrats who would not want this to be implemented as it should be. Because I have seen people who, they've seen that this works, they've seen that this is good, but they would also want to assert their positions, assert their authorities on those things just to ensure that it is done their way. So I hope that as it is being revamped, a lot of political interferences does not really come into these things and maybe hamper the process. I'm not trying to be somebody who doesn't believe in the system. I'm just saying it out there, or putting it out there, that the bureaucracies that we have in the Nigerian system, not just the education, in every sector in Nigeria, has to really be readdressed if we want to, find change in every sector. If we want change, I think we need to address a lot of those rigid systems. Yes.
I'm sure that when all of this is done, there is chances that students are not leaving the university and starting all over, learning digital skills, technical skills. Like the school already, that's why they're spending 4 years there, 5, 6, depending on their course. The school already should do that for them, should at least equip them to a level that they will be able to cope outside, especially in the workforce. I'll go back to you, Hilda.
Okay.
So, can you tell us some examples, some strategy that you think some policymakers, organizations are doing to improve the education system? Like example of organizations, policymakers that are improving the education system in Nigeria.
Okay, so I love this question because this is basically what Teach for Nigeria stands for. So Teach for Nigeria is an organization that brings in young leaders, trains them. Now, Teach for Nigeria doesn't just recruit you and send you to schools to, teach. Teach for Nigeria recruits you, they train you with 21st century skills. And the pedagogy skills that we receive during training are skills that help us and that are also very modern. So we don't get the old methods of teaching. And yes, so Teach for Nigeria is one organization that is doing so much in the education sector. Although it is currently running in the southwestern part of Nigeria. I hope that in time to come, we are going to expand beyond southern Nigeria and then come to the northern part of Nigeria and, you know, ensure that this change is being felt, you know. And if I should say more, I think there are other social enterprises that train teachers. So we have seen a lot of social enterprises coming up, and they are bringing up trainings for teachers. A lot of them are free. You know, they train teachers, and then they ensure that these teachers go back and they transfer these skills to their learners. And I think these things are putting Nigerian education system in the path that it needs to be on, so that we can get to the promised land, if I should say so.
I mean, sometimes we kind of like forget that the teachers are actually in the education sector. And we focus more on, students. But I think the education sector, it's like we need to have the teachers, we also need to have the students. And that's one thing I like about the Teach for Nigeria, as you say, is the fact that they understand that students, if you want to get the best student, you need to first start with getting and equipping the child with the best skills, so as to reach the student, which will improve our education system. I mean, we are in this space, Nelson. What do you have to say?
So just to add to what Hilda has shared with us, I think that for us to begin to look at policy recommendations or the efforts of educators, and we need to focus on a very key group of people that can revamp the narrative or change the narrative what we have currently. So because of my work as a development practitioner, I have the opportunity and privilege to interact with people from these communities, rural communities, marginalized communities, underserved communities. And when you go to those communities, the story is different. So one thing that I feel we should take advantage of is the local community structures. That is why now the idea of reinforcing, strengthening capacity of school-based management committees, that is SBMCs, is something that should be held with utmost seriousness. Because once you have these community people taking responsibility or holding even the schools themselves accountable, we'll begin to see that change we want. So community involvement is one of the way forward for us to ensure that the teachers are teaching right, to ensure that the infrastructure are kept well. Because one of the duties of this SBMC, that is school-based management committee, is to ensure that the facilities, say for example, if there's a broken window, they don't have to wait for government to send funds to fix that broken window. Within the community, they can mobilize funds. Funds can also be resources, human resources. There's always be a carpenter in any community to fix that. So you see, so that's school-based management committee, the SBMCs, can now form that structure of accountability, that structure of responsibility. So now they are now involved with the education, because sometimes I just see how the education comes to these people as a foreign idea. That's why in the north you see them, they'll tell you that Western education is haram. That means is what would I call? How would I say it? Is a taboo. Thank you, Hilda. It's a taboo, because at the community level they have not been sensitized to see the benefits of even education. And so if we keep doing many interventions, doing this, doing that, we'll just be having counterproductive kind of involvement, because we've not dealt with foundational issues. For example, during the Jonathan regime in the north, he invested a lot of money, serious money, into Almajiri schools, build schools, beautiful schools, furnish those schools. See, we're talking about infrastructure, beautiful infrastructure, furnished it. But that project, that intervention was died on delivery, because those Almajiri boys did not go there. And I just see a case of them not doing their due diligence to look at cultural practices, to look at religious biases towards even Western education. You understand? So we need to start engaging community level. You know, they say democracy is government for the people, by the people.
Yeah.
You understand? And I would say also any intervention, whether good or bad, you know, and for people like Teach for Nigeria, if you don't carry the community up, they won't really accept it.
Yeah.
So any project, any intervention, any solution without the people will be perceived as against the people. See, the community people, right? They are the professionals. They know how they can secure their school, because school safety is one issue again that is plaguing our Nigerian education system. Girls, students are being abducted from school, kidnapping in schools. So people don't even trust that, but the community people know those who are even doing this kidnapping. You understand? And if they have 100% buy-in into education, and they see that education is the way out from them, for them, to ensure that even they support the school safety measures that government is bringing into the picture.
I have never looked at it in that way. Thank you for just bringing the light there. And truly, as you said, most solutions that we need, especially in most sectors, if not even in our sector, have to be community-based. It has to be according to, I have this belief that everybody knows the solution to their problem.
Yes.
You just need to let them, tell them. They will tell you, yes, they have a problem. My problem is no water. But they can even tell you where they want the water to be coming from.
Yes.
But they just do not have the means to. But they know the solutions to their problem. And when you involve them, you'll be able to learn and hear what they want. If not, as you said, they won't use your product. They know that this is an issue, but at the same time, they have a specific way they want that issue to be solved, just not generic. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And still back to you, Nelson. The world is going digital.
Yes.
And it is high time Nigeria believe that. For that, how do you think, what are the possible technology-driven solutions you think can bridge the gap for remote learning and help students with learning? I mean, during COVID, we used remote learning, and it was effective to an extent. But yeah, after COVID, I think, not even after COVID, after the pandemic or lockdown, because there's still COVID, after the lockdown, it's like everybody just went back to the normal classroom. Why that is not bad, but yeah, the world is going digital. So what are the technology-driven solutions you think the government or possible private or public sector NGOs can do that will help bridge learning, remote learning gap for students?
Thank you so much for this question, and I'm glad you asked, because recently I had a conversation with some of my colleagues, and we're talking about technology and how it supports learning, and not just only learning, and other interventions we're trying to program around. And I tell them one very key thing: technology is at different level and stages. You have the low or no technology, because for some people, when you hear tech, we're thinking about the laptops, we're thinking about AIs. But I keep emphasizing something which I just want to be like in one theme for this conversation, is that we should start from the reality that we are in. Because during the pandemic, one thing, the digital gap was so glaring. Yes, there was this talk about remote learning, but the students or learners that were cut out from learning, from having access to learn, were nothing compared to those that could afford digital learning or remote learning. So let us look at the structure or what we have existing that can support remote learning. So growing up as a child, we were privileged to have television in my house. So NTA then used to have some educational programs where we learn. I remember then 4 o'clock we just were looking at that colored screen until when they start airing. You understand? But that was a platform for us to learn remotely. So during the pandemic, there were organizations that initiated programs where they were teaching via radio. They're teaching via radio. So what that family just need to have access to is a radio. But you see, we won't be thinking of radio as technology. And I tell them that technology is anything that supports the work of human beings. That is your pen and paper is technology. You understand? So we need to start, when we're saying tech, I know the world is doing AI now, but we have to grow into it. Because the remote communities, even if you successfully take laptops to them, we'll be talking about maintenance. Do they even have the power to sustain? Oh, we do sustainable solar for them. Do they have the technical skills for maintenance? In one of my previous engagement, we had an education program in one remote community like that, and we saw a gap that they don't have power for the children to learn. So we sought out for intervention somewhere else, and they came and provided solar home systems for the beneficiaries of that project. So now at night they have lights to be able to read. But after 1 week we started getting called. My solar is not working. And now I can't really say how many houses or households have their solar system working. You understand? So see, funds went into that beautiful initiative, but how sustainable it? So sustainability should be in the center of every kind of intervention. So remote learning. Another organization introduced learning through USSD code. So just like how you recharge star something, you can use that to learn. That is also technology. Before we start talking about how we can now have, because technology and digital learning provides a lot of benefits. Because number one, it gives you that flexibility to learn at your own pace. It gives you that room for access.
Sure.
So I can sit here now and learn in the UK.
Yeah.
You understand? Give you access, and even makes it cheaper. So I don't need to pay for flight, pay for accommodation in the UK. So highest what I pay for is tuition, and I learn here. So the conversation around digital, integrating technology and digital learning into our education system is a welcome one. However, I want us to start leveraging on, they say Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's start leveraging on what we can work with to be able to build up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Ilda, do you have something to ask concerning technology-driven solution?
He has actually said everything, because each time I think about integrating technology into the work that we do, I don't think about people who have access to these technological devices, because if we are talking about remote learning, we're talking about people who have access to phones to be able to, watch what they are learning. We are talking about people who have access to laptops, lights, electricity, and stuff. So each time we talk about infusing technology into our learning, the people that keep ringing in my head are people in underserved communities. So I'm wondering, how would Joseph, so by the way, Joseph is actually one of my pupils. I love him so much. How would Joseph navigate the laptop to be able to, listen to Miss Hilda teach, or to be able to, will he be concentrate enough to even be able to, it takes a lot to actually get these children to even concentrate. I'm talking from the perspective of someone who has actually been in an underserved community. So each time I think about remote learning and infusing technology, I just think about what's available. Like when you look at those communities, the things they need are actually, like he said, the things that are available. So that is why one of the things Teach for Nigeria did during the pandemic was radio school. So currently, Teach for Nigeria has a radio school where, we just, we teach children literacy, numeracy, and science. So that's just basically what the radio school teaches. And we have time, so we tell them on Wednesdays is literacy, on Fridays is numeracy, and then on Sunday is literacy. So we give them the channels, they have a radio. If they don't have, they have access to small phones. The smallest of phones actually have radios, so they have access to these things. So each time I think of it, I actually tell people that they should leverage what is currently available. It is the available that would the available would probably even make them to want more, you know. So when they realize what they have to gain, what they've gained from the radio school, and then you introduce phones and then you introduce stuff to them, it's easier for them to transition. But when you just bring these things, so like Nelson said, they brought solar, and then now they cannot really account for the number of homes that, so if they had done something smaller and then gradually transitioned. So I believe that transitioning is key when it comes to bringing in things that people are not very used to. Me, myself, it's always difficult to actually get into something that I'm particularly not used to. So it's easier if I have to transition gradually. So that's basically what I have to add.
Just a follow-up question. How do you think the government can better the education system, especially going down to the rural communities? What do you think the government can do to actually make the education system more, should I say, more inclusive, putting in mind the people in the rural communities?
The government will tell you that there is a policy for inclusive education. Yes, yeah, inclusive education. That is education that caters for children with disabilities. Yes, and I was in a policy review engagement with the Irede Foundation recently, and one thing we're advocating for is that there should be a budget line that will fund inclusive education. So because inclusive education is beyond just building ramps in school. Some of those ramps cannot even be accessible by children that are using wheelchairs because the angle of the ramp is just ridiculous, you understand? So schools are not accessible because we've not factored inclusivity into it. There's a policy, beautiful policy. But now what we're saying is that let there be a budget line. So one way the government can improve the education narrative in Nigeria sincerely is to increase the education financing, because that will take care of the lack of teacher capacity and their welfare. That will take care of the infrastructure issue. That will take care of access too, because now we can now have free education as it should be, not still paying one form of levy to take care of the education needs in those particular schools. And education financing too will even also mean opening the conversation for public-private partnership. So we should start thinking of how we can get private organizations to buy into this problem we have with the education. So financing can come as CSRs from some of these organizations to take care. You see, that's why the community representation still matters. Because one role of the SBMCs is to see how they mobilize funds. So for me, I would say they should strengthen this system. We already have an existing structure, strengthen it, and open up. Thank God for the work that is being done by the Nigerian Government Forum Secretariat, that they are looking into the curriculum, because the curriculum needs to capture the realities of now. Now, the whole conversation is not even talking about life skills again, technical skills. They're talking about green skills. You understand? So we need to start seeing how all those things are reflected in our curriculum. Yes. And we'll get where we want to get to.
Yeah, thank you so much. I like that private and public partnership. I think it's needed. It's needed when we get the private people into. From your angle, Hilda, what do you think the government should do? I mean, just a follow-up question from...
Okay. So as much as I'm a firm believer of the government, but if we are to address problems in any sector in Nigeria, there are key people who are important to. So there's been a global call for leaders, especially in Africa. So they've said, oh, we need leaders for Africa to be able to go beyond its current status, for Nigeria to be able to evolve beyond what it is today. We would need leaders, we would need young people who have the mindset of change, you know. So I understand that the government have a role to play. Like I think Nelson mentioned, we are good on policies. Like is in any sector. In the health sector, we have wonderful policies. In the education sector, we have beautiful policies, but we are so short on implementation. Now, that is where young change makers, leaders come in. We know these policies, we know these problems, and the reason why we are leaders and change makers is because we can be able to logically and innovatively solve these problems.
Thank you so much. While we might need the government, at the same time, citizens also need to take into consideration that we also have a role to play in ensuring that the government do their work.
And I think that's why I want to commend the purpose behind this podcast, like to and I see it's being a very strategic move to foster citizen participation in governance, because sometimes is people don't know, and if you don't know, like the Bible will say, my people perish for lack of knowledge. If you don't know, you suffer a whole lot of things. So if people are aware of these issues, are aware of the policy, they can hold our leaders, those accountable and say, okay, there's a provision for free education from primary 1 to junior secondary school, JSS 3. So why am I still paying? You can hold them accountable. And that's one key thing that is lacking, like in our governance structure: efficient and adequate public engagement with policymakers. If they are doing third or first or whatever number of hearing they are doing, you hardly find these community people in the House of Assembly engaging these policymakers. So it's like governance is just coming from up down. I still keep saying it. It should be something coming from down.
Thank you so much. Vocational training, Hilda, has been used as a means for to stop unemployment in Nigeria. From your angle, how effective do you think this training, this vocational training, will equip young people with skills that the job market needs currently? Do you think it will be effective, is effective or not? Just your opinion.
I think it is effective. Okay, so let me just bring in this. I think I was in a cab. This was just yesterday, so I think this is also strategic. So I was in a cab and I was watching something on my phone. A little girl, maybe 10, 12 years, was covering a cake, right? I think she probably made it, but she was covering it and she was doing it so well. I didn't realize that the person who was sitting next to me was also watching what I was watching. She didn't start at the beginning. So what she was doing was, she now asked, oh, so did she do it by herself? And I was like, I think she did. And then before you know, it launched us into a conversation. Like all of us in the cab started having a conversation, and this man was talking about how his daughter is so into, making cakes. She currently does a lot of stuff. Now, I think that vocational training is something that is very, very key, because it shouldn't be something we should take lightly. Yeah, it is very, very key in ensuring that students, children, young people are equipped. The job market in Nigeria, or the current situation in Nigeria, does not ensure or does not make people have access to jobs easily, right? So one of the ways you can be able to succeed, or no, let me not say succeed. One of the ways you can be able to make waves or find your footing in Nigeria is having skills such as vocational skills. Yes, so it is very effective. It is an effective method, or it's an effective way of ensuring or equipping young people. Yeah, I think it actually is. Yeah,
I think I would like to comment to as much as I agree with Hilda that vocational skills give you the opportunity to learn new skills, give you opportunity for employment, can also help with alleviating poverty. However, I think the effectiveness is dependent on a lot of variables. Number one, the quality of the training. You know, most times what I see when people say, okay, we're doing a vocational skills intervention, if you look at the quality of that training, it's just like, it's nothing to write home about. So how effective vocational training will be is dependent on how quality the training is.
That's a good one from your end also, Nelson. Thank you so much for your addition. Yes, you've trained them on the skills, but is the environment conducive enough for them to? It's just as if I don't know. They are saying that we have 5%, 4 point something percent,
4.1% unemployment rate.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good news. But let's leave that discussion for another day. So if you're saying we have this amount of unemployed people, okay, you are taking like 5 out of them, you want to train them. Okay, after training them, what next? What are you giving them? Because they are going to join the remaining people again. And then we still have 10 numbers of unemployed people, assuming. But let's assume that the vocational training is effective. Do you think this will actually have an impact on the economic landscape for Nigeria?
Definitely, because and that's why one of the situations that we have currently in our education, which even transcend beyond education, the issue of brain drain is something that we need to sit down and critically look at, because our good minds are leaving. You understand? And the greatest asset for every nation is their human capital, their human asset. And how the human asset contributes overall to the socio-economic status of that country is the kind of empowerment there. So now, if we have youth, we have the larger number of our populations that are trained, they have vocational skills, they have the 21st century skills that is ready to boost, you understand, the tech skills, the green skills, and every other kind of skills. And they invest in that nation, definitely you will see the changes. Definitely. So I think there's this relationship with how vocational skills can also help improve.
Thank you so much. I mean, we're running out of time for quickly. So we have a new minister, new administration, and a lot of us are having expectation for the government, for the new ministers, for our senators, our rep. We have a lot of aspiration and kind of like goal that we want them to meet. Starting with you, Hilda, from the new administration, especially from the Minister of Education for Nigeria, what are you expecting? What changes are you expecting that he should bring in, especially knowing the fact that he has been in the system? So he's aware of everything that all the problems and challenges we are talking about. What are you expecting from his hand? What do you expect him to tackle?
So I think I was going through his portfolio, and I saw a lot of his background, and I was actually impressed. I was impressed. And the thing is, I mentioned this earlier, and I'm going to bring it back now because it is something that might aid his work or hamper his work. I don't know if I should use that word. Now, there are lots of political interferences. So, because there's politics ingrained in every aspect of the work that is expected to be done in either the education sector, health sector, and any sector we're talking about. So, you have to do it in my constituency. You have to be here, it has to be done there, Like the system is so flawed to the extent that even if you would want to do your work, you might be hampered or you might be hindered by a lot of, circumstances. I love his portfolio. I just think that he needs to put in a lot of work to ensure that political interference does not affect the product or the quality of work he intends to do in the education sector.
I think political interference is actually one of the key stuff too, because there are some changes, or should I say innovative solutions that should go to a particular community. But maybe because they don't have enough representative, it might go to the city instead of it going to the rural place.
Actually needed.
So that's actually a good point from you. Thank you so much for that answer, Hilda. And for you, Nelson, what are the innovative transformation you're expecting from the Minister for Education in this new administration?
Okay, so I don't know if innovative transformation might be how I want to target, but this will be my attempt to try to set an agenda for the honorable minister, and especially because of his portfolio, like she said. I remember when they nominated him, few people came and even gave testimony of how they learned from him. Well, kudos to him. However, we don't want to keep having these elective courses in our university called Strike 101. So, honorable minister, sir, if you can, let's just put an end to this industrial action that is coming almost like year in, year out from ASU. Secondly, education financing. The budget allocation for education, if we really want to be serious with education, we need to review it. Thirdly, I'm glad to hear that the Nigerian Governors Forum is currently looking at reviewing the curriculum. Curriculum revamp is something that you should focus on. Thirdly, our education should be accessible and inclusive, especially for children with disabilities. So we want to see classes that accommodate every form of disabilities. Fourthly, it's looking like I'm putting him on the spot, right? Fourthly, he has to pay attention to our teacher capacity and welfare. We want to have happy teachers and trained teachers. I think I'll just stop here.
I think it would be good for us to just go for 5. 5 for 5.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Except you have one more to add.
If it comes, I'll drop it. Let's see how the conversation.
Thank you so much, Nelson. I am glad that you both gave us like what you're expecting from the minister, especially knowing the fact that you're in this sector. You know the reality that this sector is going through. Yeah. We want happy teachers and trained young people. Inclusive education. It is vital for us to have this inclusivity in our education sector. We want a new curriculum. No, a better curriculum, because maybe it's new or not, but just practical curriculum, something that we all can relate to. We want that. And other infrastructure also should be looked at. I mean, our curriculum should be more practical than theoretical. And Nelson has given our new minister I can
make it 5 anyway. So you should pay attention to digital literacy.
Digital literacy.
Yes. So in case, God forbid, we have another pandemic, we could be able to accommodate remote learning.
Yeah. Hopefully there will not be another pandemic. But thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nelson. Thank you so much, Hilda, for joining us on this exciting episode of the Nigeria in Focus show. It's amazing having you two both that in this system, in this sector, and I've experienced the reality that this sector has, especially the challenges that you both have faced during your work, trying to engage students, young people in rural community, even in city, knowing that, this particular thing are the one injuring young people from learning, injuring our education sector from growing, because if we have a good education sector, I am sure all other sector will, not all, but most of the sector will be settled. The health sector will be okay. Other sectors will be okay. So thank you so much again for joining us on this episode.
Thank you for having me.
And to our audience watching online, thank you for staying with us again on this day to this minute. We've come to the end of the Nigeria in Focus show. Until next time, see you and have a wonderful day.